Welcome to Roadmap to 1 Million. My name is Stacey Zeal, and if you're looking to make more money, gain your time back, and rapidly grow your visibility so that you can impact way more people with your brilliance, you're in the right place. This podcast is your one-stop shop for turning your online business dreams into a reality. My main goal is to give women entrepreneurs just like you the marketing strategies, guidance, and expert insights you need to hit that $1 million milestone and beyond. Whether you're a coach, a consultant, or an online brand that wants to make a big impact, Roadmap to 1 Million gives you the actionable strategies and inspiration you need so that you can implement right away, no fluff, no fuss. So CEO, are you ready to buckle up and accelerate your growth? Be sure to follow the show and let's dive in. Get ready to uncover your roadmap to 1 million. Hey there, fellow entrepreneurs. Are you doing all the things but hit a revenue ceiling? You're building an audience, you're creating content and making sales, but you feel like something is holding you back from your next milestone. If that sounds like you, it's time to take our What's Your Missing Marketing Link quiz, your go-to tool to identify what's missing from your marketing strategy that might be holding back your business growth. Whether it's fixing your funnel or diversifying your efforts, this quiz will pinpoint those marketing missteps and guide you to success. Take the quiz today and uncover the missing link in your path to 7 figures and beyond. So head over to staceyzeal.co/quiz because success begins with identifying and fixing those mistakes. So don't miss out. Your business deserves to have the impact you desire. Visit staceyzeal.co/quiz. That's STACYZEAL.co/quiz to get a detailed report and the resources you need to help you grow. All right, let's jump back into the episode. All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Roadmap to 1 Million podcast. My name is Stacey and I am your host, and I am excited for you to be here. If this is your first time tuning into Roadmap to 1 Million, welcome, welcome. This is the last episode of the year, so make sure you are subscribed and you can go back to listen to all of our episodes from this year. And if you are returning here, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate you being here and tuning in. If you get something valuable out of this episode, which I know you will, definitely make sure you share this with somebody, a business bestie, somebody, a friend, somebody who has a business and they're trying to grow, because all of us are trying to get our businesses to go to the next level. So what I'm going to talk about today is how we can kind of like wrap out the year, but then how we can also kind of like launch into next year. And I have a fantastic guest that's going to help me to walk through that, who is definitely a systems and operations expert. But I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself. So thank you so much for being here, Diane. How are you?
Hi. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to have this conversation as kind of the springboard into 2025 and making scaling your business kind of inevitable. Isn't that kind of
Yes. Come on, inevitable scale.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing is like, we always think about scaling in a sense that like, I need more traffic. I need more people. I need more people to see what I'm doing. But, if it breaks the inside of your business, which, that's definitely happened to me. And I know this happened to a lot of people, that you kind of just feel like you're hitting a wall and you just can't break past it. And so before we start talking about systems and all that kind of stuff, tell us a little bit about your background, your journey to where you're at, a little bit about what you do, all the things.
Yeah, totally. So I am Diane Lam. I am a systems and scaling mentor for coaches, consultants, and other done-for-you service providers. I will help them untangle their systems so that they can actually scale with half the time and effort, and with systems that actually guarantee their version of freedom and flexibility. Because who really cares about a system if it doesn't actually support your life, support the business that you want to have in the long run? So I'm all about the systems that actually give you the freedom and the flexibility. And there's a very specific way to create those things, right? And a lot of times we don't even think about them when it comes to the scaling game. And so I think it's really important for us to really think about our systems in terms of like, what can it do for me? How is it going to support me? How is this going to free up my time? How's it going to make me more money? How is this going to actually create something that I desire in my business? And that's really my approach to systems.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that approach because I feel like, the as we look at where people are at, especially like other business owners, we started our business because we wanted the freedom, but then we ended up giving ourselves another job. But then you get to this place where I feel like you remove yourself from that job and you start to have these systems and you start to have these kinds of things in place to help you to scale and help you to do what you do, better, more efficiently, faster, so that when you start to see the scaling and, see the scale and see the revenue and stuff coming from it. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about Balancing growth and avoiding burnout. Because I think that for me, at least I'll speak, because I know that my audience kind of feels similar things, is that you're trying to grow, you're trying to scale, you're trying to get to the next level, but for some reason, the bigger you get, the more inevitable burnout is. It's kind of like you see the burnout train just coming towards you, and you feel like you could just power through it. You're like, maybe if I just, get, maybe once I hit this certain revenue level, maybe once I have a certain, hire a team, then I'll be able to avoid this burnout. But tell me a little bit about how operations and systems and kind of making those improvements over time can help entrepreneurs avoid that burnout train that they see coming.
Yeah, 100%. And like what you explained is so, so common. Like like literally, I will say I did the math. It's like 95% of my past clients have all been in that train where they've waited longer than they wish they had waited. They were expecting like, oh, when I hire the team, when I hire the VA, when I reach a certain revenue level, it will just suddenly get easier. Or when I have this number of clients, my business will just start working. Like, all those celebrity entrepreneurs and those influencers that we see, like I'll be like, suddenly the light will go off, things will switch, and then I'll be drinking Mai Tais on the beach while the catch races are ringing in the background.
Right.
And the thing about that is that like it doesn't happen without actual intentional planning, right? So when we're caught in that cycle of what we see, like, oh wow, this celebrity entrepreneur, they have the lifestyle, they just like work 4 hours a week. It's amazing, but we don't see the backstory of what they have going on in their business. We don't see like how many iterations of different processes, different funnels, different ad sets that they created in order to get to that level of sustainability in their business, right? So when we're talking about burnout and sustainability, it really comes down to the structures that you put into your business to support you first, right? So making sure that you have a way to keep the continuous parts of your business running so that you're not always driving it forward, right? I think about it like a bicycle. There's always stuff you got to do in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're just starting out on your own, you're riding the bicycle, you're pedaling, right? You're doing the money generating activities. But then what happens when you get tired and you want to take a break? You hop off the bicycle and then it all stops. So the money generating systems kind of, or like activities kind of stop when you're off the bicycle. And what do you do then? You can add another rider, like a VA, but then like one of you needs to continuously be riding. And
Mm-hmm.
you're probably going to be riding that bicycle a lot more than your VA because you just know more things. So there are gonna be things you're like, I know that I've done this for sure, and I'm sure other people on this podcast were like, it's just easier for me to do it myself, so I'm just gonna do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that keeps you locked in the business instead of giving work to your VA, that other rider who's gonna pedal the bicycle instead of you. The other thing I see is like people want to like upgrade their tech. If I get the right CRM, then it will suddenly magically fix everything, right? If I just find that perfect all-in-one tool, it will fix everything. And that's kind of like upgrading, like maybe you have a beach cruiser, like to continue the bike analogy, and you upgrade to like a road racing mountain bike or something, right? Okay, so you have more high-tech gear. You can go further with your bicycle, but you still got to ride it, right? So
Yes.
that's the thing. So we got to make the change to something that processizes, turns the business more into a machine, especially around the money making aspects, like particularly marketing and sales. Because I can't think of a single business that ever stops marketing or ever stops selling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if you know one, you let me know because
Right.
I would be very fascinated to like
Absolutely.
understand their business model. And those are things we continuously have to do. So those are the areas I would always say, these are the places I would focus as you're building your systems, because you'll be able to continuously drive sales, stabilize your income while
Mm-hmm.
also taking some time for yourself, like to being able to take yourself a little bit out of that constant production, that constant cycling mode, right? So that's where I really say people to focus when they're kind of trying to balance burnout. I was like, well, what are you doing to turn your business into a machine, particularly the ongoing marketing and sales side of it? So you can kind of create some breathing room for yourself. If you're not doing anything, well, then I was like, that's probably the first big problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I love the analogy of the bike because you're, talking about how the perfect tool won't fix it. Because a lot of times people do think, oh, if I have the right CRM, if I have the, this tool or that tool, then that's going to automate, what I'm doing. But somebody still has to drive, right? Somebody still has to do it. Just like with AI, right? Like, if you're using AI, somebody still has to put in good prompts and, and then to train it to get some good stuff, right? Like you can't just, it's not something that you just stop doing. Like people think that you get to a place where you stop marketing. And it's like, no, you don't ever stop marketing. You're just going to be doing more marketing marketing, and you need to just be able to get a bigger bang for your buck. And you have to be doing it in a way that doesn't require a lot of manual effort. Because that's where a lot of people in my audience are at now, is that they're relying on organic social media, they're relying on organic marketing. But organic marketing is just like pedaling that bike, right? You just have to stay on it, right? You just have to keep going or it's going to stop. And that's really how these platforms are set up. They're not set up for longevity. Like advertising is something, that's set up for longevity. And that's how I teach my clients how to look at ads, right? Like it's a way to automate that sales and marketing, engine that you were talking about. And so you talked about a couple of the systems that you have. So I would love for you to run everybody through, because I know you have 6 money making systems that you teach. And so I would love for you to run through what those systems are, and talk a little bit about maybe just like why that why that particular system is important, and then kind of why it's important to have all 6 of those.
Yeah, of course. So the 6 core systems to any business are going to be marketing, right? You have to market. It just never ever stops. So creating process and systems around your marketing is really key so that you can create space for yourself, right? From marketing, it really easily flows into sales. You have to have sales systems to be able to sell, whether you're doing it directly, like through sales calls or, through other places, because sales is like a longer cycle. I think it's not just the sales interaction that you're having when they get to the call, but like, what are you doing to nurture them, to warm them up, to prime them for conversion, right? So that marketing and sales piece kind of fit together. So those are 2 core systems, and where a lot of the money making revenue generation piece fits in. From there, we really go into the client experience, right? Client experience systems are really important because you only get good referrals from people who have good experiences, and that experience starts with your client onboarding and offboarding systems, right? Like if they don't have a good experience with you, they are like, I'm confused. I don't really know what to do next. Did I make the right choice? They are not going to be good referrers. Like they're not going to send you more dream clients just like them, right? And this is really leads into the delivery systems, right? So this is where you're actually delivering your service, because like clients who have good starting experiences with you, when they get great results, they also become really great referrers. So finding ways to practically guarantee that you can deliver at a certain standard is so vital, because not only does it create spaciousness and time for you, because if you have a process around how you deliver, it goes faster. You can increase, you can accelerate how quickly you get through. You don't have to spend so much time in it, right? Like how many of us are like in there, like, oh my gosh, I have to like create this website, and I'm in there trying to find all the bits and pieces, and like, where did I ask that client to put their brand guide? And then like, where are their logo assets at? If you don't have any clear organization or process, right, it just takes longer. So when we remove that, you save time, which you can put towards marketing and sales, or just like having a good time in your life, which I mean, I want that. But it's also like when your clients get better results, they also become better referrers, right? And this is a place where it's like we forget that like when I had that client, they're going to spend more, and they're probably going to refer people who are going to buy faster from me, right? So that's kind of some low hanging fruit that can help generate more money and at a higher rate than what your cold leads are going to generate for you. Right. And then from there, I really talk about the team management systems, because like you have to find a way to take yourself out of the business eventually. You cannot be the only person driving everything forward. So what are your processes? What are the systems to really get great performance out of the VAs, the OBMs, the people around you? Like there's no secret sauce, right? It's not just like finding that secret magical virtual assistant or OBM. Like great unicorn team members, contractors, VAs, they're not born. You create them. And you tell them how to be that great support for you. And when you create process around that, it becomes really easy to have like a stacked deep bench on your team, taking you out of the day-to-day. So those are really the core systems that I think I can't think of a single business that doesn't have those components in them. And we're talking about money driving. I'd say the clearest place where like the first hit is like in the marketing and sales, right? That's where you can like create process and take yourself out of business and stabilize your revenue. And the other pieces like where we're guaranteeing client experience, we're giving them a good experience. This is where we're starting to take ourselves out of the business, accelerate our delivery so we have more time to do the money generating things. And then we also are doubly creating like a way for clients to get really great results and become good referrers for us. And then finally, we're just taking ourselves out of the business altogether, right? So it's all a process that kind of ties together. And the reason I link them together is because this is the flow that when you're selling something, when you have an offer, you market it, you sell it, you onboard, put people through a client experience, you deliver it, and then you have your team support you as you're doing it, right? So this is how you scale one whole offer. You have to have the whole pathway built out. And when you're missing pieces, that's where you're like, oh, whatever happened to that? It's like we just stopped, right? Like when we're building them piecemeal, or we just pick one tech, or like we write one SOP for like marketing and then we don't fill in the rest of the gaps. It's like, oh, well, what happens next? Now I have to fill in, I have to step in again and fill in the gaps, taking my time and attention from something else, or letting important money generating stuff fall to the wayside again, right? So this is why I like really tie them together. Six is when you have all six, then you can like, you have a full pathway to scale that offer and you don't hit as many roadblocks along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that it makes so much sense because I could clearly see how one stacks on the other, but then I could also see how the you would have a breakdown going the reverse way, right? Because if you're, if you're having to deliver everything and nobody else is helping you out, that's a bottleneck. If you are, bogged down by onboarding people manually and offboarding people manually, that causes up that takes up your time, and then you can't put all that money, put all that time into sales and marketing and all these other things you have to do. I know that when I get busy with client work, marketing and sales are the things, to go, but those are the things that help to bring in the clients. Those are the things that stabilize revenue, and it's something that we always have to be doing. We can't just, stop, even if you're stopping marketing for a couple weeks or a month, right? Like marketing has a compounding effect. And so if you stop in month one, you may not feel it right now, but you're going to feel it, next month or the following month when your leads have dried up and you have clients that are leaving, and you're having to hurry up and get back to marketing. So,
yeah, like that panic mode of like waking up one day, I'm like, oh my God, I offboarded my last client. Where's my next one coming from? And then you're
exactly.
like creating a ton of content. You're suddenly showing up on social media every day. You're in your stories,
Yep.
you're on TikTok, you're doing the dances. Like, because you're trying to get back into the state of like, oh, okay, I have good lead flow again. And like that is such a hard, like when it's like an uphill track,
Mm,
right? It's so much easier to just maintain than it is to like constantly be trekking uphill. Like I don't want to be constantly walking uphill. Like I want to work less hard all the
yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
like let's just maintain and continue the status quo. And like it feels like when you are putting those systems in place, it's like, oh, I got to slow down. I'm slowing down. I don't see anything happening. This doesn't
Mm,
feel like anything is progressing. And then you get to the bottom of that, like, where's my next client coming from? Oh my God, I'm panicked. I'm freaking out.
yeah.
That's where your systems kind of like catch you as a safety net. Because
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I can pull the vault, or we can repurpose something, or we can like, we have the ads running, or we have the funnel going, whatever it is to kind of keep things going without you constantly touching it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, how would you say someone would go about finding out where their biggest gap is between these different systems? Because I think, as we're closing out the year and thinking about 2025, where, people are thinking about where to allocate their time, their resources, their money, all that kind of stuff. So, can you let us know with like, coaches, consultants, how do we identify that gap on where we should, kind of start to focus?
Oh, I think you already know, right? So like I'm not like okay, I do believe in metrics. I do believe in KPIs, but a lot of times a lot of small business owners, a lot of solopreneurs or coaches, consultants, they're not set up to be pulling all this data and actually like they don't have the setup in the background. They don't have the systems already in place to be running and like actually generating good KPI numbers and metrics. So you actually already know though. Like I am a big proponent of the gut check method. Like if
Mhm.
I just told you like these are the six core systems of your business, you need to market, you need to sell, you need to like deliver a great client experience. You got to be able to deliver that program with high quality every single time. You know whether or not you're doing those things well, right? So I always ask my clients, like, what's your gut check? You know when you're like, and you clench a little bit. You're like, actually, I haven't posted anything on like they whisper it, like, I haven't posted anything on social media in 2 weeks. I'm taking a break, and I'm like, you don't have to whisper to me.
Nobody else is listening.
And so they have things like that. So I really say, check your gut. Like, how well are these parts of your business working? You probably already know. And if they're like, oh, it doesn't feel really great, then the next question for you is like, okay, well, are you spending the amount of time that you want here? Does this actually work you enjoy doing? That is also a yes or no question that you could probably answer very clearly yourself without looking at anything happening in the back end. And if it's a no, then that means that like, hey, these are areas that I really need to focus in on right away, right? So I can get myself out of the business. I can get myself, in a place where we have more stability. I can get myself where we're doing the work to make more money consistently, right? Like if I ask you like, Stacey, are you consistently marketing your business? You're probably going to answer yes or no. And
Right.
probably I'm going to say yes because I see your posts on LinkedIn and I see you showing up always in my feed. So I'm like, yes, right? But if you're like, no, then you're like, okay, this is an area I really need to fix. So
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of just like checking your gut. If you are thinking about these 6 areas and you're like, I can't say yes that I like how this is running. I can't say yes that this feels smooth. I can't say yes that this is actually working for me. That is a clear indicator
Yeah.
that you have a breakdown and this is a critical area to look at in your business.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I love the gut check because, so when you said it, I knew exactly which one it was for me. For us, it's definitely systematizing the client delivery, because that's one of the things that we've been working on. Is a lot of what we do being, it ends up being custom, where even though we have like templates and stuff like that. One of the things we just started to put together was a Facebook ads management playbook. And, for me, I know how, to deliver Facebook ads and to build them for our clients because I've been having to do them, right? As you know, when it's just me. But now that I have a team, now that I have someone else who's building the ads, I had to make sure that I document like how do we run ads for clients? How do we build this? How do we build that? I have so many Loom videos that I've created, but they were all in Loom. They're not like in any place where somebody can go and say, okay, one document. Now I know exactly how to run our clients' ads top to bottom, right? How to set up the Zapier integrations, all that kind of stuff, right? And so that has been an area of focus for us. So I love, talking about doing the gut check. So that people can like kind of start to really understand it. I think, one of the biggest things I will always say out of the systems, I think, sales and marketing are the ones that are always having to happen, right? Like it's like I feel like, with our client onboarding system, for example, we took a good amount of time, a couple years ago to lay out the foundation for our client onboarding and offboarding. Now we're in the place where we're tweaking it, updating it, shifting and changing, but we're not building it from scratch. But I feel like with marketing and sales, a lot of people feel like they need to build from scratch, or they feel like they're just starting over and over and over again. So what are some of the things that system wise, when it comes to like marketing and sales, like what are some of the big things that you think your clients have found a lot of success in when they've systematized those particular areas?
Yeah, like I think like when you think about marketing and sales, it's like it's a huge umbrella. There's a
Mhm.
ton of things that actually fall under the sphere of marketing and sales. And we think about it as like, oh, it's just marketing. It's just marketing. It's not a big deal. But actually, when we dive into the nitty-gritty, like there are a lot of different facets within marketing and sales. So it's really honing in on like, well, how are you actually marketing? I have some clients who are like, no, I only want to do YouTube. I don't show up anywhere else, right? And I have other clients who are like, I live for Instagram. Like this is where I love showing up. I love showing up here. Okay, so your system is going to be slightly different, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to content. And that boils down to repurposing and redistribution, right? How many ways can we leverage this content? Because if you're on YouTube, you're on Instagram, it doesn't matter. You still have to create content to feed those machines, those platforms, right? So when the first places I'm usually looking is like, well, how are you creating content? What's your process for this? What's your origin content,
Mhm.
right? And how can we utilize, how can you leverage it in multiple different ways? So it's like, instead of like, well, I love, like in the past, this has shifted for me a little bit. Like I used to love writing long emails to my
Mhm.
email list. And then we would find ways to like repurpose that across platform. Maybe that one long email becomes like 4 or 5 reels, or, a bunch of different like Instagram posts or carousels or whatever it is. And now they shifted where I like, I really like making reels now. And we're like, well, how do we turn those into emails? And so when I'm talking to a client, it's like, well, what's your origin content? And how can we repurpose this so that we can multiply the amount of content we have so that we're actually just showing up more consistent, right? A lot of the game on social media, especially with the marketing side of it, is just being consistent, having something to show up there, right? And if your messaging is tight, you like, hey, this piece of content performed well, we got a good engagement from it. What's that say? Like, let's use it again. Let's use that same, no changes. Let's just use the whole thing over again. Because just like marketing, like the social media platforms love consistency. If they know it did well before, they're going to push it again because they know it's going to do well again. Right. So those are things that where we can be really consistent and take ourselves out of the constant creation, because creation can take up a lot of time. Right. So if you're creating stuff from scratch all the time, yeah, it's going to be hard. You're going to be burning a lot of time. But if you have pieces that have already done well, or that you're like, I really love this email I saw, I really love this blog. Okay, let's use it again. Let's use it in different ways. Let's change the media. Let's change the layout. Let's change, maybe the hook or like the way that it was set up. Let's change something about it, and it's brand new. Like we can use it all over again, right? And then the same thing with distribution platforms. Like, okay, maybe we only live on LinkedIn, or maybe we only live on Instagram. Can we push this somewhere else? So we're getting more of a broad stroke, and then you're showing up more consistently, you have more eyeballs, right? That's how you build visibility and build your audience. So that's one of the first places I'm always looking is like, what is your content strategy? How are we going to distribute that? How are we going to organize it so we can constantly repurpose and pull from the vault so you don't have to create as much? That's the first place you're going to save so much time in just constantly create all of your content all the time. So that's one of the first places I'm always looking in marketing. And then the other place is like email, right? Like I know people are like, email is dead. No one does email anymore. Like who still gives out their email? I'm like, I like email. If I care about it, I want it to come to my
my
inbox.
email about 4 or 5 times a day sometimes.
4 or 5 times an hour if I'm like really like peeping a sale or like a ticket drop or something. I'm like, when am I gonna get that like that open like first wave buy your tickets now email? Like I'm constantly checking. So I really, really believe in email. And so that's another place where we're really focusing on clients, especially if they do want to run ads. Like we need to lead these people somewhere. I was actually talking to like a contact recently where they're asking me my advice and like, well, what do you think about like this like sales page or whatever it is? And I'm like, okay, it looks fine. Like I don't know what you're doing though. Like I have no context for what you're trying to accomplish. And like, oh, I want to run cold ads to it. And I was like, to this page? Like I was like, this is like a $6,000 offer. Like,
I don't understand who is out here telling people that this strategy works, because I've had another client that had a high ticket membership and was just running an ad to a VSL that went to just like an application. I'm like, nobody's buying $5,000 a year memberships because they saw an ad and just went to directly to apply, right? So it's similar to what you're saying, like just driving traffic to a cold sales page it is wild. But sorry, go ahead. It was a
no, I get it, right? Like it's 100% true. So like we set up email for that exact purpose so that you can warm them up a little bit. Like I was like, maybe you don't have to send them like 100 emails, but maybe you can send them a few to like warm them up and get them a little bit closer to the next step and the next step in conversion. I won't say I won't say it's impossible that someone's just not going to. I mean, like, I think anything is technically possible. It's just highly improbable that they're going to see your ad and be like, okay, $6,000, here's my credit card. Especially this late in the game, I feel like there's been a big shift in the last couple of years, and especially in the online service space, where people are just more discerning, right? Like I ran a poll on my Instagram stories, and people are, I think it was like something like 84% of people were like, trust is at an all-time low. I don't trust anyone when it comes to like the things that they're selling online. And I was like, wow, that is a very telling number. And so like really being able to warm people up and being able to do it through email, because you can't always count on social media to push your content to them. Right. So, I mean, I will email you every day until you buy something from me or you unsubscribe. Well, no big deal. Right. So that's the thing where we miss that piece, and we're like, oh, well, why isn't my funnel working? Why is no one buying passively? Well, because you're sending them directly to the sales page, and they don't know anything about you. They don't know anything about the offer. They're not really clear on what the transformation is or how it will benefit them. And they're not ready to buy. Right. So we got to warm them up and get them ready to buy. And the best place to do that is through email. So you can really broadcast directly to them. You can track, you can see who's opening those emails. You can see how many times they click the link. And that is so much more valuable than how many eyeballs are viewing my reel on Instagram. Or, I had, 1 million people follow me on TikTok, but then they never see my stuff. So like, what does it matter? Right? There's things like that. Email is kind of the place where I also focus in terms of the marketing side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all that, because I think, one, I love what you're talking about, having your origin content, because that's what I like. I teach my clients about having like an anchor piece of content. And for us, it's our podcast, where I'm like, okay, this podcast is one, it's a medium that I like to show up in, and I love to be able to talk and, bring guests on and do my solo episodes. But two, it becomes then a piece of content that we use to nurture our audience. And so we use other types of content to attract an audience. So like social media for us, bringing new eyeballs to the podcast. The podcast is there to keep us showing up every week. So we send our podcast out to our email list every week. We post it as a blog every week, right? We get 3 social media posts that go out every week for the podcast. And when you start to systematize your marketing, and you anchor it around longer form pieces of content, because I think that's other thread that we were kind of like, hinting at here, is that social media is such a fleeting kind of channel that you need to have these longer pieces of content that you can take and turn into, social media posts to bring people into your world or get them on your email list, watching your, listening to your podcast, all the things. And so you have to have a way of not only just like kind of showing up, but you also have to be more, focused on what each of your content's job is. Like your long form, your anchor pieces of content, that origin content, what is the goal of that, right? Like, whether it's videos, blogs, it does not matter, podcasts, it doesn't matter. What is the goal of this? If the goal is to nurture and to get people and to stay top of mind until people are ready to buy from you, you have to approach it that way. But then you also have to bring new people into your world. So how are you bringing new people into your world? Whether that's advertising, whether that's, creating, reels that actually drive people to a podcast or drive people to a lead magnet or drive people to a masterclass, right? So everything should be working together. And I think that when you start to look at your marketing more as a flywheel, rather than looking at it as individual kind of like, different pieces, then you start to realize like, oh, there is a system here, right? And my favorite thing to do, honestly, is to follow, bigger brands and, other business owners. And you'll start to notice they run the same webinars on the same kind of schedules, right? Like they have the same kinds of content that they talk about at different times of the year. I remember I was listening to, there's one podcast, and she had like some kind of like, I think she had like a health thing or something like that. But she was just like, she had one episode in her podcast. She was like, yeah, the last, I don't know, 10 episodes were episodes that were repurposed from a challenge that we did last year. And I'm like, oh, you know what? That podcast does sound familiar, but I'm not following her like that I'm going to be like, oh, she repurposed this podcast from 2 months ago. So now I'm not going to follow her. Right. Like, so those, I think that's what people think is going to happen. People are going to see like, oh, you are repurposing content, or you're focusing on these other kinds of things, and then they can't necessarily want to, they're not going to want to buy from you because they don't think you're original.
No, I think
right?
People will realize it's like no one is paying as much attention to you as you think.
Literally.
Like, very few people are actually paying that much attention to you, right? And so that's kind of where we kind of get stuck in our heads of like, oh, well, we need fresh all the time. No, we don't. Because if you're actually looking at the numbers, especially on social, if you're lucky, 30% of your audience is seeing your content. Even if you were to repost the exact same thing, that person who maybe saw it in that 30%, they probably don't remember. This is a good reminder for them to see it again. And the other people who weren't in that original 30%, this is the opportunity for them to see it for the first time, right? So like I really believe that like repurposing our content and really leveraging it is such a strong source for us to really be able to stay consistent, because like no one is actually seeing the full story. So we got to continuously push the message over and over and over again, now more than ever, right? Like we got to put, I think it was before it was like 7 touches. Now it's like, I think somebody told me it's like 12 to 13 touches, just because like we are just so desensitized to what we're seeing. So post that content, leverage it, use it up, chop it up even more, right? Because people need to hear it more frequently. And if your message is good and like I said the things in here that you need to know, say it again, say it louder for the person in the back who didn't hear you, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's actually something that's really beneficial to your audience, because they need to hear it over and over again. Because like maybe you have this podcast, right? And maybe they're listening to like the first 20 minutes of it and they forget to come back to it. Like I do it in my car all the time. Like I turn my car off, I get to the mall. Okay, like I forget where I was. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? I actually want to listen to that Bruno Mars and Rose song. Okay, let me listen to that. And I'm off the podcast. And then you send me the email. And I remember like, oh yeah, I was listening to, let me get back to that. Okay. Right. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear that topic that she was talking about, and then I get back into it. So there's all of those things that work together to really support your marketing. And that can be processized. That can be systemized so that you can show up really consistently. You're not constantly like new. We all burn out. We all get tired. We all can't be creative all the time. And this is your backup plan for that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, things like content calendars, those kinds of things, it really makes it easier to repurpose, and it also makes it easier to hand off to somebody else, because there's a lot of times, like, as solopreneurs or business owners, when we're starting out, we're at the center of our systems, right? Where we're at the center of sales, we're at the system of in the center of marketing, client delivery, all the things. But with marketing, is what I can necessarily speak to. these kinds of having systems in place make it easier for someone to be able to take some of it off of your plate. Even if you're the one still writing your content, your marketing coordinator, your marketing assistant can be the person that goes and repurposes this content, right? Like when I record this podcast, we have a whole system, we have a content calendar of everything where it goes. So my responsibility as the content creator, as the face or the thought leader of the brand, is to record the podcast and put it into the system, put exactly where it needs to go, and then my team knows, hey, we have a podcast that comes out every Tuesday. We know that when it needs to be out. We know what tools we use to do the show notes and how we get it out, right? So now I'm at a place where I'm no longer approving my show notes before they go out. I'm no longer approving social media posts about the podcast before they go out, right? Because my team, we've created systems, we put those systems in place to make it so, the structure, to be honest, systems and structure in place to make it so that my team can take that, right? And I still am able to write content. I'm still able to, do the podcast, all that kind of stuff. So I can be as involved as I want to be. But there are things that you can definitely start to delegate from your marketing that you don't need to do, which is, definitely that content repurposing, especially with AI now. There's so many tools out there that you can use to repurpose content, and I can drop a couple of my favorite ones in the show notes for y'all. But one thing I want to talk about before we go is thinking about now where we're at, right? It's last day of the year. We're wrapping up 2024, going into 2025. What advice are you giving your clients right now in this moment to help them to not only close out the year, but also prepare themselves for next year? What advice do you have for those people who are, in that kind of like thinking about systems? How are they preparing for next year?
So hopefully we're at the end of the year, we've already done a lot of the legwork, right? We've already looked at the process. We've already kind of tightened things up. So we're good to go. Because I think what I will say about systems, kind of like you said, like how you now have a process where you don't have to really check your show notes. They get better with time, right? Mm-hmm. When you put them at the onset, like you're probably going to need to tweak and adjust them a little bit to get them just right. So with my clients, hopefully like we have already talked about those things. We already kind of know where we're going. And if we haven't, then like what's the game plan to figure out like where are our gaps, right? So I always say like, okay, if we haven't really looked at our systems yet, then we need to look first at the audit. Like if you do the gut check, and then if you're like, no, I need to go more in depth, like we need to look at every single piece of the pie in terms of the back end, then really audit the back end, look at your process, look at your automations, look at your tech. And are these all aligning to your bigger goal? Like, how do you want this part of the business to run? Is it aligning to that? Yes or no? And then you can make adjustments from there. The game plan would then to make shore up those areas where you're like, no, this is very weak. Like, I don't like I don't like the tech. I don't like none of the automations work. We don't even have the process. Okay, great. Like that's an area we need to shore up, especially if it's in a revenue generating part of our business. That's where I would plan first, right? To really make sure that like you can stabilize your income. Like I think everyone's goal as an entrepreneur is to continue the revenue, right? Like you don't have a business if you have no revenue, you have hobbies, right? Like so you want to make sure that you are expensive hobbies at that. So you want to make sure that like first and foremost, like let's make sure we have these pieces locked into place, like we can stabilize our revenue first and foremost. So if you're like, oh man, like I have nothing, I have zero. Okay, then look at those first marketing and sales pieces of your business and really look at like, do I feel good about what I have or what I'm doing already? And if not, that's the first place I really need to shore things up so that I can go into the rest of the year knowing that, okay, the pressure is off of me constantly showing up. We have the motorcycle or the machine running for marketing. So that's a little more breathing room. That creates spaciousness, mm-hmm. right? So that you have some lift and you have some like maneuverability going into the rest of the year. That's where I'm really focusing with my clients is like, are we locked in these areas? And if not, we got to shore things up. Like, let's make sure we can at least get through Q1. We can get through the first half of the year, knowing that like, oh, these parts are going to be pretty stable. And then we can like think strategically about what piece in everything else.
Yeah. I think that definitely makes so much sense, right? Like, taking that time to audit your systems and figuring out like, and even like, auditing, sitting and thinking, putting some time on your calendar to think and sit and think about how this year felt for you. Like, I know that's, for me, and for a lot of other people, that I've come across, like it felt like a tough year. And I'm like, okay, like now that we're acknowledging that it felt like a tough year, but why was it tough, right? Like, what can I do to free up some of my space, some of my time? And I think, definitely prioritizing systems and how we deliver things, how we, market our business, how we do sales and all the other things you mentioned. I think that that's such a great place to really kind of, end things, is like do an audit of your systems, like take a look at where you're at. And I know that there's going to be people out there that don't necessarily want to do that themselves, and they would rather hire somebody like you, because sometimes people think systems and they're just like, So tell us a little bit about how people can connect with you, how they can learn more, how they can work with you, all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mostly hang out on Instagram. You guys can hang out with me there. I share a lot of like my best tips, tricks, hacks to really start to move the needle when it comes to scaling your business with systems that actually give you results that you want, right? Because it's not just it's the different approach that I've seen from most other systems people out there, right? So that's where I really hang out. You can come hang out with me there. And if you're like, I'm not the one to untangle all of this. I do work with clients one-on-one in an audit and design sprint, where the first thing I will do is, as an expert, I will look, just give me the keys to the kingdom, and I will look at all of the back end pieces, and I will tell you yes or no. Does this actually align with what you're trying to accomplish or not? And what would be a better fit? And where do you need to, oh man, you really need to shore things up here. Like you're like, oh no, like I have no email system, but we're running ads. I'm like, you're leaking leads. Like that's
Literally.
money out the door. So those are the places where we're like, we can really shore things up really quickly. And I can design the entire systems work, from the process to the tech to the automations, to help them scale their offers. And actually open the doors to my group program recently, which is my most comprehensive and most affordable offering yet, where we do it in a group setting. It's for coaches who are ready to like have an expert at their side, while we customize the systems, and we do it over just 2 half days, one system built every single month, and then you can move on. It's done and dusted.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So as the final question, now that y'all know, and also just so everybody listening knows, definitely make sure you check out the show notes, because we'll have all of Diane's links to her Instagram and all the places. But I would love to ask you this final last wrap up question. So what is one piece of advice that you would give every online business owner, or what's one piece of advice you wish all online business owners knew that would help to set them up for a successful 2025?
Oh man, this is a really good question. No one has ever asked me this on all the podcasts I've ever been in. Okay, so this is what is going to set you up for a great 2025? I think the one thing that really business owners need to know is that like you're like, yes, systems feel really scary. They can feel very overwhelming, and they feel like, oh my gosh, it's a huge project that's going to be very like disruptive to your business. But in reality, systems were never ever meant to be built all at one time. Usually when that happens, it's usually only because something bad has already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because something like a ball has been dropped, a client has been upset or complained, or a big deliverable deadline was missed, whatever it is. That's when you're like, okay, I'm ready to build everything. I want to build everything. But more typically in corporate fashion, in every business I've ever been in, they're supposed to be built systematically, one at a time, so that you have time to integrate them into your business, start using them. Because what is the point of a system if it just sits in a drawer, like in your Google Drive, you never integrate it into your business, right? Then it's a waste.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important piece for people to know. It's better to start earlier with one piece at a time. Don't think like, oh, I have to do it all, right? Build with them one at a time, and you will be a lot more successful. You'll be a lot more stable, and you'll be a lot more scalable over the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that advice, because it really, one, it gives us permission to slow down and realize, like, okay, like Rome was not built in a day. I have completely, business owners, we have created something from scratch, something that did not exist. And so we can give ourselves grace and understanding that, when all of these large companies that we look up to started, they were holding their systems together by, bubble gum and shoestring as well. And
Yeah.
so, start to figure out what's the one area I can focus on now, and then use that time that you free up to then focus on another type of system that'll free your time, right? So I love the approach of, taking it one at a time, and not necessarily overwhelming yourself by trying to get all of this stuff done in a day, or really kind of like using this time to think about what is going to be the most impactful system that I can put in place. The six, right? Y'all listen to the episode, the six. Do that gut check, figure out, what is that one place that I think that I can focus on right now that'll definitely free up my time, the most, and that way I can put it into reinvest that time into some of these other things. And in the meantime, if you're looking for expert help, you definitely want to make sure you check out Diane and look at her website. All the things will be linked in the show notes. So thank you so much, Diane. This has been such a great conversation. I'm so glad that I got to have you on here. I know that my wheels are turning about systems, and so I know the audience's wheels are turning about systems. So thanks again, y'all, for tuning into this episode of Roadmap to 1 Million. I hope that you have a happy new year. I hope to see y'all in 2025. And we're going to be killing it. Next year is going to be fantastic. So make sure you're following the show. Make sure you're checking in with Diane and some of our other guests that we've had. Otherwise, I will see y'all on the next episode of Roadmap to 1 Million. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
OMG, that episode was packed with gems. Are you ready for more? Head over to stacyzeal.co/podcast to get the show notes and to sign up to get our top 5 podcast episodes to help you streamline your marketing so you can make this your $1 million year. Head over to stacyzeal.co/podcast.